My name is Marion. I'm 65 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that family meant everything. I thought the jewelry collection I inherited from 3 generations of strong women in my family would someday pass to loving hands. These weren't just accessories sitting in a velvet-lined box. They were pieces of history, love letters written in gold and precious stones. But when my daughter-in-law Jessica started making comments about how I didn't need them anymore, I never imagined she'd actually take matters into her own hands. Little did I know that her greed would lead to the biggest mistake of her life. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this all played out. To understand how devastating Jessica's betrayal was, you need to know what these pieces meant to me. My marriage to Robert lasted 40 beautiful years until cancer took him 3 years ago. He was my college sweetheart, the man who held my hand through every storm life threw our way. The jewelry collection wasn't just about monetary value. It was my heritage, my connection to the women who came before me. There was my great-grandmother's wedding ring, a simple gold band that traveled from County Cork, Ireland, to Ellis Island in 1905. She wore it through the Great Depression, never once considering selling it, even when food was scarce. My mother's pearl necklace came next, a gift from my father on their 10th anniversary. I remember how she'd touch it when she was nervous, rolling the smooth pearls between her fingers like a rosary. And then there were the diamond earrings Robert gave me for my 50th birthday, the ones that caught the light so beautifully. They made me feel young again, even as my hair was turning silver. Each piece told a story of love, sacrifice, and endurance. When Robert was dying, he made me promise to keep them safe, to pass them down when the time was right. I kept that promise, storing them carefully in my bedroom, safe, taking them out only for special occasions, or when I needed to feel connected to the people I'd lost. David met Jessica at the law firm, where they both worked 5 years ago. I was thrilled when he brought her home for the first time. She was stunning with long auburn hair and bright green eyes that lit up when she laughed. More importantly, she seemed to genuinely love my son. She listened when he talked, laughed at his terrible jokes, and even helped him pick out thoughtful gifts for me. But something shifted after their wedding 2 years ago. The warm, considerate woman I'd welcomed into our family began showing a different side. Jessica started making comments about how lucky David was to have family with nice things. She'd walk through my house like she was taking inventory, her eyes lingering on artwork furniture, and especially the jewelry box on my dresser. The first red flag came during a Sunday dinner about 6 months after the wedding. I was wearing my mother's pearl necklace, something I did whenever I missed her most. Jessica kept staring at it throughout the meal, finally saying, "It's such a shame those beautiful pieces just sit in your jewelry box, Marion. They're meant to be worn and appreciated." I smiled politely and explained that I wore them when the occasion felt right, that each piece had special meaning. Jessica nodded, but I caught her exchanging a look with David that made my stomach tighten. It was the kind of look that said they discussed this before in private conversations I wasn't part of. Over the following weeks, Jessica's comments became more frequent and less subtle. She'd offer to help me organize my jewelry, suggesting I might want to rotate pieces so they could get proper use. When I deflected these offers gently but firmly, I noticed her jaw tense in a way that reminded me of a child being told no about a toy they desperately wanted. The breaking point of that first phase came when Jessica asked to borrow the pearl necklace for her law firm's holiday party. She framed it as a favor to David, saying how proud he'd be to see his wife wearing something so elegant and meaningful. When I explained that the necklace was too precious to lend out, Jessica's mask slipped for just a moment. Her smile became forced, and she said quietly, "I thought we were family. Marian, I thought you trusted me." That comment haunted me for days. Was I being selfish? Was I letting my attachment to objects hurt my relationship with my son's wife? But every time I considered giving in, I'd remember Robert's dying words about keeping our legacy safe. Some things I realized were worth protecting, even if it made people uncomfortable. The next 6 months brought a subtle but persistent campaign that left me feeling like a stranger in my own family. Jessica became bolder in her pursuit of my jewelry, and David seemed either oblivious or deliberately blind to what was happening. I started noticing Jessica researching the pieces online. She'd bring her laptop to family dinners casually, showing me articles about vintage jewelry values or estate auction results. Did you know pearls from the 1940s can be worth $15,000? She'd say, as if sharing interesting trivia rather than evaluating my inheritance like a pawn shop owner. The conversations between Jessica and David became harder to ignore. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but our house had thin walls and voices carry. "Your mother is sitting on a gold mine," I heard Jessica tell David one evening when they thought I was asleep. "Those pieces could pay for our down payment on that house in Westfield. She barely goes anywhere to wear them anyway." David's response was muffled, but I caught enough to know he wasn't defending me the way a son should. Instead, he seemed to be weighing her arguments, considering the practical benefits of liquidating what he'd apparently started viewing as unused assets rather than family heirlooms. Jessica's approach shifted from hints to direct requests. She started asking me to gift pieces to her for special occasions. For their anniversary, she wanted the emerald bracelet my mother had worn to my wedding. For her promotion celebration, she suggested the diamond earrings would be perfect. Each request came with the same underlying message: I was an old woman hoarding treasures that could be put to better use by someone younger. "You barely go out anyway," Jessica said one afternoon, her voice carrying a casual cruelty that took my breath away. "I'm young. I can appreciate them more. I'd actually wear them instead of keeping them locked away like they're in some museum." When I maintained my position about keeping the collection intact, Jessica's frustration bubbled over into anger for the first time. "You can't take them with you when you die," she snapped immediately, trying to soften it with a laugh. and claim she was joking. But we both knew she wasn't. David found himself caught between his mother and his wife, and increasingly I could see which side he was choosing. He'd make weak attempts to mediate, suggesting compromises that always seemed to favor Jessica's position. Maybe Mom could let you wear one piece for really special occasions, he'd offer, or what if we had some of the pieces appraised so everyone knows their real value? But the moment that truly broke my heart came during a dinner party Jessica hosted at their apartment. She'd invited several of her lawyer friends, successful women with expensive tastes and competitive spirits. As they admired Jessica's outfit and accessories, she steered the conversation toward inheritance and family wealth. David's family has the most incredible jewelry collection, she told her friends, speaking as if she already owned it. When I inherit these pieces, I'll actually wear them instead of hoarding them. There's this pearl necklace that's probably worth more than my car, just sitting unused while David's mother refuses to enjoy life. The casual way she said, "when I inherit," rather than "if," made my blood run cold. Jessica wasn't just hoping to eventually receive these pieces through normal inheritance. She was planning for it, counting on it, and apparently discussing timeline expectations with her friends. That night, I began to understand that Jessica didn't see me as David's mother, who deserved respect and consideration. She saw me as an obstacle standing between her and what she'd decided should be hers. The jewelry wasn't family history to her. It was a resource being wasted by a stubborn old woman who didn't understand practical value. I started paying closer attention to Jessica's behavior during family visits. What I discovered made my suspicions crystallize into genuine alarm. She'd disappear into my bedroom while David and I were talking, claiming she needed to use the bathroom or freshen up. But the bathroom was down the hall. She was going to my bedroom, where the jewelry box sat on my dresser, and the safe was hidden behind Robert's portrait. My growing wariness of Jessica proved justified when I caught her in the act of betraying my trust in the most calculated way possible. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when she and David came over for their weekly check-in visit. I'd excused myself to answer a phone call from my sister, leaving them in the living room. The call lasted longer than expected, and when I returned, David was outside watering my garden, while Jessica was nowhere to be seen. I found her in my bedroom, standing in front of my jewelry box, with her phone out, clearly photographing the contents. She startled when she saw me nearly dropping the phone. "Oh, Marian, I was just looking for David. I got turned around." But the jewelry box was open, and I could see she'd been moving pieces around to get better photos. "Jessica," I said carefully, "what are you doing with my jewelry?" Her recovery was smooth, practiced. "I was just showing my friend Sarah how beautiful they are. She's getting married next year and was asking about vintage pieces for something borrowed. I thought you'd be flattered that people admire your collection." It was a reasonable explanation, but something in her eyes told me there was more to it. I asked to see the photos she'd taken, claiming I'd like to see how the pieces looked from a different angle. Jessica hesitated for just a moment too long before handing over her phone. The photos weren't casual snapshots to show a friend. They were detailed, professional quality images, showing each piece from multiple angles, with careful attention to any maker's marks or unique characteristics. These were the kinds of photos someone would take if they were planning to sell something and needed to show potential buyers exactly what they were getting. When I confronted Jessica about this, she laughed it off with a story about her friend being very particular about seeing details before making any decisions. But I noticed she was backing toward the bedroom door, putting distance between herself and me. More importantly, I noticed she was no longer making eye contact. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I carefully photographed every single piece in my collection, noting the exact position of each item in the jewelry box and safe. If Jessica was planning something, I wanted to be able to prove what had been taken. I also installed a small security camera in my bedroom, hidden behind a picture frame. The idea of surveilling my own daughter-in-law made me sick. But Jessica's behavior had moved beyond inappropriate curiosity into something that felt genuinely threatening. 3 days later, my instincts proved correct. I came home from grocery shopping to find David and Jessica's car in my driveway. They had keys to help with yard work and mail collection when I was away, but I wasn't away. They weren't expecting me back for another hour. I entered quietly through the back door and heard voices upstairs. Jessica was in my bedroom again, and this time, David was with her. I crept up the stairs, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anger I'd never felt toward my own son. The combination is her wedding anniversary, David was saying. October the 15th, 1978, 101578. He was giving Jessica the combination to my safe. I stood frozen on the stairs as I heard the electronic beeps of the safe opening. Jessica's voice was excited, almost breathless. David, look at these pieces. This emerald bracelet alone is probably worth $20,000. And this ring, my God, the diamond is huge. I still don't feel right about this, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe we should wait and talk to Mom about liquidating some pieces she never wears. Your mother is never going to voluntarily sell these, Jessica replied. She's emotionally attached in an unhealthy way. But David, we could use this money now while we're young enough to enjoy it. We could buy that house, travel to Europe, start our family in financial security. What if she notices they're missing? She's 65 years old, David. Her memory isn't what it used to be. And honestly, when was the last time you saw her wear any of these pieces? She won't even know they're gone. I heard rustling, the sound of jewelry being moved around. They were actually taking pieces from my safe, discussing my memory and my age, like I was already too senile to notice theft happening in my own home. The betrayal was complete. My son, the boy I'd raised to value honesty and respect, was helping his wife steal from me. They weren't just taking jewelry, they were taking my connection to my mother, my grandmother, my late husband. They were stealing my history and calling it practical financial planning. I retreated downstairs and waited. 20 minutes later, they came down together, acting perfectly normal. Jessica kissed my cheek goodbye and told me how lovely it was to spend time with me. David hugged me and promised to call later in the week. After they left, I went immediately to my bedroom safe. 8 pieces were missing, including the most valuable and meaningful items in my collection. My great-grandmother's wedding ring, my mother's pearl necklace, the diamond earrings from Robert, and the emerald bracelet that had been my mother's most prized possession. I sat on my bed, staring at the empty spots in my jewelry box, feeling more alone and betrayed than I had since Robert died. My son had given my daughter-in-law access to my most precious possessions, and she'd taken them without a second thought. But as the initial shock wore off, something else settled in a cold, calculating anger that reminded me of my Irish grandmother's legendary temper. Jessica thought she was dealing with a confused old woman who wouldn't notice or fight back. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. The next phase of Jessica's deception revealed the full scope of her betrayal and gave me the ammunition I needed for the response I was already planning. She wasn't just an opportunistic thief. She was a calculated predator who'd been studying my family's vulnerabilities for months. My first step was calling Mark Thompson, a private investigator who'd been Robert's close friend for over 30 years. Mark had helped us with a few legal matters over the years, and I trusted him completely. When I explained what had happened, his response was immediate and professional. "Marion, this isn't just theft. This is elder abuse, and it's a felony. We need to document everything before confronting them." Mark's investigation moved quickly. Within 2 days, he'd tracked down 3 different jewelry stores and pawn shops where Jessica had sold 5 of my pieces. The security footage was clear. Jessica alone confidently negotiating prices for items she claimed were inherited from her grandmother. She'd sold my mother's emerald bracelet for $800 to a pawn shop on the other side of town. The antique dealer who bought my great-grandmother's wedding ring paid her $1,200, a fraction of its actual value. Most heartbreaking of all, she'd sold my diamond anniversary band, the last gift Robert ever gave me, to a jewelry store for $1,500. Mark obtained copies of all the sales receipts and security footage. Jessica had used her real name and identification for every transaction, apparently confident that she'd never be questioned about the jewelry's origins. Her arrogance would become her downfall. But Jessica's most audacious move was yet to come. The following weekend, David invited me to dinner at their apartment. It was meant to be a casual family meal, but the moment I walked in, I spotted my mother's pearl necklace around Jessica's neck. She was wearing stolen jewelry to dinner with the woman she'd stolen it from. "Oh, this old thing," Jessica said when she noticed me staring. "My grandmother left it to me years ago. I finally had it restrung so I could wear it again. Isn't it beautiful?" The necklace had a small scratch on the third pearl from the clasp, a mark I'd made accidentally about 10 years earlier when I caught it on a door handle. I knew this necklace like I knew my own reflection. Jessica was not only wearing my mother's jewelry, she was lying to my face about where she got it. David complimented how lovely it looked on her, apparently having no memory of seeing me wear the same necklace dozens of times over the years. Either my son's memory was failing or he was actively participating in the deception. During dinner, Jessica steered the conversation toward inheritance and family legacy. She talked about how important it was for young people to appreciate beautiful things, how tragic it was when precious items sat unused in old homes. She was building a narrative that would justify her actions if she was ever questioned. "I believe jewelry should be worn and loved," she said, fingering the stolen pearls. "Keeping beautiful pieces locked away seems almost disrespectful to the people who originally owned them." I wanted to scream. I wanted to reach across the table and tear my mother's necklace from her throat. Instead, I smiled and nodded, playing the role of the oblivious elderly mother while mentally preparing for the confrontation that was coming. After dinner, Jessica showed me photos on her phone from a recent work event. In several pictures, she was wearing different pieces. From my collection, the diamond earrings with a black cocktail dress, my grandmother's gold bracelet with a business suit. She'd been wearing my stolen jewelry to public events, confident that I'd never see the photos or recognize my own possessions. "You look beautiful in all these pictures," I told her, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "That jewelry really suits you." Jessica beamed at the compliment, completely missing the dangerous undertone in my words. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd successfully manipulated an old woman into accepting her theft as inevitable inheritance. She had no idea that every smile, every lie, every moment of false intimacy was being mentally catalogued as evidence for the reckoning that was coming. The confrontation I'd been planning came together perfectly during what Jessica thought would be a routine family dinner. I'd invited her parents, Donald and Patricia, along with David and Jessica, to my house for Sunday dinner. Jessica had no idea that her parents' presence was strategic, not social. I'd spent the week working with Mark to prepare an airtight case. We had the security footage from the jewelry stores, copies of the sales receipts, photographs of my collection before the theft. And most importantly, we had Jessica's own social media posts showing her wearing my jewelry at various events over the past month. Jessica arrived wearing my mother's pearl necklace, again, clearly feeling confident about her ongoing deception. She'd been wearing it regularly, probably convinced that repetition would somehow legitimize her possession of it. During the appetizer course, I casually mentioned how lovely the necklace looked on her. "Jessica, that's such a beautiful piece. It reminds me of one my mother used to wear. Can you tell me more about its history?" Jessica launched into an elaborate story about her maternal grandmother's jewelry collection, describing how the pearls had been passed down through generations of her family. She spoke with convincing emotion about the sentimental value and family memories attached to the necklace. Her parents, Donald and Patricia, listened with growing confusion. Finally, Patricia interrupted gently. "Honey, I don't remember your grandmother ever owning a pearl necklace like that. She preferred simple gold jewelry, remember? And my mother only had a small collection of costume pieces." Jessica's face flushed as she tried to modify her story. "Oh, I meant my great-grandmother. You probably don't remember seeing it because she kept it stored away most of the time." Donald shook his head. "Jessica, Both your great-grandmothers died when you were very young. We handled their estates, and there wasn't any significant jewelry in either one. I think we would have remembered pearls like those. The tension at the table was becoming obvious to everyone except Jessica, who was desperately trying to maintain her fabricated story. David looked confused and uncomfortable, clearly realizing that something was seriously wrong with his wife's explanation. "That's interesting," I said calmly, reaching for the manila envelope Mark had prepared for me. "Because I have some photographs here that might help clear up the confusion." I spread out the photos chronologically. Pictures of me wearing the pearl necklace at David's high school graduation, at his college graduation, at his wedding, and at dozens of family events over the past 20 years. In every photo, I was wearing the same necklace that was currently around Jessica's neck. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's parents stared at their daughter in horror as the magnitude of what she'd done became clear. David's face went white as he realized his wife had been lying to everyone, including him. "I can also show you the security footage of you selling my mother's emerald bracelet to Morrison's pawn shop last Tuesday." I continued pulling out additional photos. "And here's the receipt for my grandmother's wedding ring, which you sold to Hartley Antiques for $1,200. That ring was worth at least $8,000. Jessica tried one last desperate deflection. "I don't know what you're talking about. This necklace has been in my family for years." "Really?" I reached across the table and gently lifted the necklace, pointing to the small scratch on the third pearl. "Then can you explain how your family heirloom has the exact same damage that I caused 10 years ago, when I caught it on my kitchen cabinet handle?" The final pieces of evidence were Jessica's own social media posts. I showed everyone the photos she'd proudly posted, from various work events wearing different pieces, from my stolen collection. In her eagerness to show off her new jewelry, she'd created a digital trail that perfectly documented her crimes. Jessica's parents were devastated. Patricia started crying, apologizing repeatedly for their daughter's behavior. Donald demanded to know how Jessica could have done something so cruel and dishonest to family. David sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the full scope of his wife's deception. She hadn't just stolen from me. She'd manipulated him into being an accomplice by giving her access to my safe combination. "Jessica," I said quietly, "I want every piece of my jewelry returned immediately. The 5 items you sold need to be bought back regardless of cost. You have 48 hours to make this right, or I'm filing criminal charges for elder abuse and felony theft." Jessica finally broke down, admitting to everything, while trying to justify her actions. She claimed I never wore the jewelry anyway, that it was wasteful to keep valuable pieces unused, that she and David needed the money more than I needed sentimental objects. Even in her confession, she couldn't understand that she'd stolen irreplaceable family history, not just expensive accessories. The aftermath of that dinner changed everything in my family, but not in the way Jessica had planned when she began her campaign of theft and manipulation. Justice came swiftly and completely, though not without pain for everyone involved. Jessica managed to recover only 3 of the 8 stolen pieces. The pawn shop still had my mother's emerald bracelet, and I bought it back for $2,000, more than double what they'd paid Jessica. The antique dealer had already sold my grandmother's wedding ring to a collector in another state, but agreed to help track it down for a substantial fee. My diamond anniversary band was gone forever, sold to a jewelry store that had immediately reset the stone into a different setting for a customer. That loss hurt more than all the others combined because it was the last tangible connection to Robert's love. David was shattered when he fully understood how Jessica had used and manipulated him. She'd convinced him that I was being unreasonably possessive about jewelry I never wore, painting me as a selfish old woman, clinging to material objects while young people struggled financially. "Mom, I am so sorry," he told me through tears 2 days after the confrontation. "I thought I was helping Jessica connect with family history. I never imagined she was planning to steal from you." David filed for divorce within a week. The betrayal ran too deep for their marriage to survive, especially when he learned that Jessica had been researching the value of my jewelry since before their wedding. What he'd thought was love had been a calculated long-term plan to access family wealth. Jessica's parents were mortified by their daughter's actions. They insisted on paying the costs associated with recovering the stolen pieces and offered to cover any legal expenses if I decided to press charges. Their shame was almost as painful to watch as David's heartbreak. I decided not to pursue criminal charges, but only because Jessica's parents intervened with a financial settlement that covered my losses and ensured she would never contact our family again. They also insisted she enter counseling to address what they recognized as serious problems with impulse control and entitlement. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about protecting my possessions more carefully, though I certainly changed my security arrangements. It was about the difference between people who understand the value of legacy and those who only see dollar signs. Some people inherit jewelry and think about the hands that wore it before them, the occasions that made it special, the love that passed it down through generations. Others look at the same pieces and calculate resale value, considering them wasted resources if they're not being monetized. Jessica never understood that my jewelry collection wasn't about the gold and gems. It was about carrying my mother's strength when I touched her pearls, feeling my grandmother's resilience when I wore her ring, remembering Robert's love when I put on the earrings he'd saved months to buy me. You can't steal memories or heritage, even if you take the physical objects that represent them. Jessica got some valuable jewelry, but she never got what those pieces actually meant. That was something she never could have taken from me, no matter how clever her manipulations became. 6 months later, David began dating a teacher named Susan, who listened to my stories about family history with genuine interest and never once asked about the monetary value of anything I showed her. When I eventually gave her my mother's gold locket for her birthday, she cried because she understood she was being trusted with something precious, not being handed expensive jewelry. That's the difference between someone who deserves family treasures and someone who steals them. The healing process taught me more about family trust and the true value of inheritance than 65 years of life had prepared me for. It's been 8 months since that confrontation dinner, and while some wounds are still tender, the most important relationships have grown stronger. David and I rebuilt our connection slowly, with honest conversations about how Jessica's manipulation had affected both of us. He'd been caught between loyalty to his wife and love for his mother, manipulated by someone who understood his desire to keep peace in his family. His guilt about giving Jessica access to my safe was something we worked through together, acknowledging that love sometimes makes us vulnerable to people with bad intentions. The jewelry collection looks different now, with gaps where pieces used to be. I recovered 3 of the 8 stolen items, but 5 are gone forever, including some that can never be replaced. Instead of feeling bitter about the losses, I've chosen to see them as expensive lessons about protecting what matters most. I've also made changes to ensure this kind of betrayal can't happen again. The remaining pieces are now stored in a bank safety deposit box, with only my attorney having backup access. More importantly, I've had honest conversations with David about inheritance, making my wishes clear, so there won't be confusion or temptation in the future. The new security measures aren't just about protecting objects. They're about protecting relationships from the kind of strain that happens when money and sentiment collide in unhealthy ways. Susan David's new girlfriend has brought joy back into our family gatherings. She listens to my stories about each piece of jewelry with genuine fascination, asking about the people who wore them before me and the occasions that made them special. When I offered to let her borrow my pearl earrings for a work event, she was honored, but insisted on wearing them only after I told her their history. That's what Jessica never understood. The jewelry wasn't valuable because of its price tags. It was precious because of the love and memories embedded in every piece. I've also learned to spot the warning signs of someone who sees family heirlooms as personal treasure rather than shared legacy. Jessica's behavior followed a pattern excessive interest in monetary value comments about wasted resources, suggestions about better uses for inherited items, and ultimately a sense of entitlement to things that belonged to someone else. Future daughter-in-laws will be welcomed warmly, but they'll earn access to family treasures through demonstrated respect and understanding, not through marriage certificates and manipulation. The most surprising outcome has been my relationship with Jessica's parents, Donald and Patricia. They've remained in contact, still horrified by their daughter's actions, and determined to maintain the connection with our family that she severed. They've become surrogate grandparents to David, filling some of the emotional gaps left by Jessica's betrayal. Their ongoing friendship reminds me that family isn't always defined by blood or marriage. Sometimes it's created by people who share your values and understand what you're trying to protect. As I look back on this difficult year, I realize that Jessica's theft taught me something valuable about the difference between giving and taking. I'd always planned to share my jewelry collection with future family members, passing down pieces when relationships had developed enough trust and understanding. Jessica's approach was to take what she wanted when she wanted it, justifying the theft with arguments about practicality and age. She never earned the right to wear my mother's pearls, but she took them anyway. The pieces I've gifted to Susan mean more to both of us because they were freely given to someone who appreciates their history, not stolen by someone who only saw their value. Sometimes, the most valuable treasures aren't the ones you can touch, but the lessons you learn about who truly deserves your trust. My jewelry box is emptier now, but my understanding of real family loyalty is richer than ever. Have you ever had someone try to take advantage of your generosity or trust? How did you handle it when family relationships became complicated by money or inheritance issues? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and the lessons we learn when people show us who they really are. Share this with someone who might need to hear about the importance of setting boundaries with family members. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your family treasures, whether they're made of gold or just made of memories, deserve to be protected by people who understand their true value.